Hello, my name is Jeff Kindart, and today we are going to talk about farm safety. Agriculture work is both dangerous and hazardous. Growers should think in terms of their own personal safety, as well as the safety and legal and moral responsibilities that they have for their employees. We'll start by discussing eye protection. Potential for eye injuries are everywhere. From apple pruning to pumpkin picking, numerous farm activities have the potential to cause eye injury. We most commonly think about physical injury, which can be addressed through safety glasses. But additionally, growers should consider protecting their eyes from excess UV radiation through either sunglasses or appropriately coated prescription lenses. Protecting one's skin from excessive UV radiation is also very important. Routine use of hat and sunscreen should be standard practice. A 2011 study by the National Cancer Institute showed that farmers have a higher skin cancer rate than that of the general population, which makes sense as we tend to spend so much time out in the sun. So do be careful and make sure we get covered up with sunscreen or clothing and try to keep our UV exposure in a reasonable volume. Hearing loss is another common concern among agricultural workers. The power equipment in common use for many hours of each day often generate noise levels of sufficient quantity to result in ear damage. Farmers and their employees should always wear hearing protectors when warranted. There are various types of hearing protectors, and each type offers a little bit different degree of protection. When deciding what type of hearing protectors to purchase, growers should consult manufacturer information and select those that afford the appropriate level of protection for the tasks that are being performed. In some cases, there are some pieces of machinery where we probably actually need to use two kinds of hearing protection. In other words, we may have something that is in the ear as well as muffs that are over the ear. As far as one being better than another, if all things are equal, if you are going to wear one and be more comfortable with one type and actually use it, then that may wind up being the best overall choice. It does absolutely no good whatsoever to have a very expensive pair of hearing protectors that you feel are uncomfortable so that you never use them. So select something appropriate that's comfortable and actually use it. We should also protect our extremities. Gloves and good shoes are an important part of farm safety. Gloves should be appropriate for the size of the individual and the task being performed. In other words, make sure our gloves fit and they have the correct grip for whatever it is that we happen to be undertaking for the day's activity. Footwear should be selected that keep feet dry and comfortable. Ideally, shoes should be slip resistant and completely cover the foot. Open-toed footwear is never recommended. Laces should always be tied to avoid slips, trips, or even worse, entanglements. High tunnels and greenhouses are particularly good places to experience excessively high temperatures in the summertime. Heat exhaustion and heat stroke are two common forms of heat-induced illness. Extreme cases of heat stroke can be fatal, and even when not, a single heat stroke event may result in long-term health consequences for the afflicted individual. During periods of high heat, it is critical that you and your employees have access to something to drink and exercise good judgment in the amount of time spent on task and taking breaks. Growers may benefit from downloading apps that provide them with alerts when there are times of heat warning or advisories that have been activated. Up until now, this talk has largely centered on personal safety, but it is important to understand just how dangerous agriculture industry is for all who participate in it. The nature of the activities being performed, machinery and tools being utilized, typical long days, and the environment where the tasks are being performed almost all have a degree of danger. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, 479 fatal accidents occurred in 2013 performing agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting occupations. The right half of the table that you see in this slide shows just how truly dangerous agriculture is. The fatal injury rate per 100,000 full-time equivalent is the highest in agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting category. The 22.2 per 100,000 rate for agricultural fatalities is nearly 70% higher than that of the next highest occupational sector. This slide just shows a general breakdown of how the 2013 fatalities occurred. There are a lot of different reasons that accidents happen on the farm. Some of the more common accidents are listed here. Tractor rollovers tend to be the #1 cause of fatal injury. Power takeoff and grain bin accidents tend to be significant contributors to farm fatality numbers as well. And this slide just shows some of the agriculturally related morbidity and mortality information from the United States Center for Disease Control. And in here it shows, pretty clearly, if you'll read through this slide, it talks about just how important it is that you have a good ROPS or rollover protection structure on your tractor. If your tractor is old and didn't come with one, in many cases there are manufacturers that provide retrofits, but it really is of paramount importance that any tractors you're operating be equipped with rollover prevention and seat belts. Information on properly operating a tractor should always begin with both a thorough reading and understanding of the manufacturer supplied owner's manual. If you have purchased a used tractor which did not come with a manual, you should obtain one. Many manuals are available as free PDF downloads on the internet. Most can be ordered through dealerships if we cannot find an online version. All safety decals, stickers, guards, and shields should always be maintained as designed unless there have been factory authorized retrofits. If you are unfamiliar with basic tractor operating procedure, there are numerous training materials available online from both public and private sector websites. Even if you are familiar with good tractor operating procedure, it would be a good idea to find training materials that you like and use them to properly train all of your family members and employees that might operate the tractor. The same holds true for virtually all of the equipment on your farm, whether it's a hand tiller or a tractor mounted tiller. Every piece of equipment, the people who are going to be operating it should have received training on how to safely and effectively operate the piece of machinery. I would encourage that employees be shown the slide set at the above link so that they have a very concrete understanding of the potential outcome for failure to properly operate a tractor or machinery. Do be cautioned, it is a very graphic slide set, and it's not going to be shown as a matter of being crass, but just so that they really understand the potential forever consequences that can occur when we do not properly operate farm equipment. There are many very good websites devoted entirely to farm safety. One of them that I particularly liked was one from Alabama. Here are some of the training materials available from Alabama Extension that could be easily adopted to virtually any farm. Spend a little bit of time talking about some of the lesser perils, less common problems that we see on the farm, but they're ones that personally I know of people that have lost their life in each one of these categories in Illinois farms. They would include things like weather related problems, chainsaw accidents, electrocutions, and carbon monoxide poisonings. Lightning in general has decreased as a fatal event in agriculture, overall largely due that most tractors now have an enclosed cab. Open cab tractors, while far less common out driving across Illinois in typical row crop production, they are still very much common though for specialty crop producers. Lightning is not only a problem for individuals in open cab tractors, but also for all field workers who are on foot. When lightning is present, it is imperative workers must be immediately removed from harm's way until after the danger has passed for a substantial amount of time. Smartphone apps like WeatherBug with its Spark Alert that provide lightning notifications, I think, are very much worthwhile downloads that growers should have on their phone so that when the lightning strikes, the phone beeps and you know it's time to start moving employees. Accidents that result from chainsaw operations are commonplace. In many cases, it's not even an actual chainsaw wound that causes the injury, but instead it's the injury the result of being struck by a branch of the tree or a falling tree or trips or slips or other things that happen while we were operating the chainsaw. There is a training site devoted to chainsaw safety operation by the University of Illinois Department of NRES, shown here. In addition, the U of I's Department of NRES does offer periodic chainsaw safety clinics that would be good for people to participate in. Electrical shocks and electrocutions do unfortunately occur in agricultural production. While these can occur while operating any electric device, we should be especially careful and mindful with electricity in greenhouse and high tunnel settings. Wire greenhouse circuits in accordance with electrical standards. If you're not familiar with how to do that, then hire someone to do it for you. Use conduit where appropriate, and always use ground fault interrupting devices of some type in the greenhouse environment. Additionally, be mindful of overhead and buried electric lines that may be on your farm, and those overhead lines when we're carrying a piece of aluminum irrigation pipe or a ladder, or we have the bucket front end loader up on the tractor. Those all represent significant contact injuries. On buried lines, when we're out doing work, punching post hole diggers or digging with a shovel, we can get in trouble. So be mindful of both overhead and buried electric lines that may be present on your farm. Agricultural workers should also be trained in safe ladder operation. Ladder accidents are commonplace on farms. They are sometimes fatal, but oftentimes not, but may result in permanent disabilities from the falls. Make sure everyone is trained on proper use of ladders as well as proper procedures for how to lift so that we do not have neuromuscular injury occurring and hurting people's backs. Carbon monoxide poisoning is another potentially fatal hazard for farmers. Operating gas-powered engines or non-electric heat sources such as wood burning or gas furnaces in enclosed areas has the potential to result in carbon monoxide poisoning. One of the things that we will see, we have somebody that's going out and they're running a tiller early in the year inside of their high tunnel, and they've got the high tunnel all sealed up because it's cold outside. Well, you're accumulating in some cases some pretty significant levels of carbon monoxide while that tiller is in there running. Always afford ventilation when operating gasoline-powered engines in enclosed areas such as greenhouses, high tunnels, coolers, or packing sheds. Be mindful of this potential problem. Any farm utilizing pesticides must be in compliance with the United States EPA Worker Protection Standard, oftentimes referred to as just WPS. This law has elements regarding employee training, employee right to know, requirements for personal protective equipment, and much, much more. More information on the EPA's Worker Protection Standard can be found at the link contained in the slide above. In addition to Worker Protection Standard, which must be complied to by all farms who are using pesticides. In addition to that, I think nearly everyone will be familiar with the U.S. Department of Labor's OSHA regulations. But do be advised that most farmers are exempted from these regulations. However, even though your farm may be exempt from the regulations, it is still a good idea to look at OSHA's website and review their guidelines, training materials, and they even afford some educational opportunities for yourself and your employees. So they may not apply in your particular farming situation, but they could still be a very useful resource in terms of guidelines, recommendations, and training materials. And this slide set simply shows the exemptions and limitations associated with OSHA regulations. And the kind of the long story short is if we're less than 10 employees and we are not operating or utilizing workers from a temporary labor camp, then for most of you, OSHA regulations are really not a component of something that you will be involved with. And one final thought on farm safety. Growers should be mindful to protect themselves and their employees from biological hazards. Vector-borne diseases such as West Nile disease and Lyme disease make it such that growers should consider the use of insect repellents for personal protection in certain situations. Everyone on the farm should be mindful of the potential for insect and spider stings and bites. Those with anaphylactic concerns should carry EpiPens or other appropriate rescue measures. The hot environment of the greenhouse can sometimes lead to very significant populations of brown recluse and black widow spiders. And in the southern part of the state where venomous snakes are indigenous, farmers and their employees should have training on identification of any potential threats. Outbreaks of poison ivy are common and for some individuals may become relatively severe. Protective measures should be undertaken when dealing with poison ivy. Like Mom always said, leaflets 3, let it be. In closing, agriculture is a very, very dangerous occupation, always has been and likely always will be. It's a wonderful way to make a living, but let's make sure that we keep ourselves and everyone that works for us as safe as possible. That's all for today. Until next time, happy farming.